All right, Sixth Amendment. What is the Sixth Amendment? Oh, oh, what is the Sixth Amendment, huh? Olivia? Yeah, good job, right? So, right to a lawyer and fair and speedy trial. Okay. And that's what we're going to discuss today. So, we will go through cruel and unusual punishments as well. And we'll go to the Ninth Amendment when it comes to rights that are reserved. Well, rights that are not specifically stated in the Constitution, where that goes. And then, yeah, with the states, right? And how that's kind of got to be a check for the necessary and proper clause. All right, so here we go. Here we go. Sixth Amendment. So, what does it mean again? Guarantees right to fair and speedy trial. So, it's important because in case something does happen, right? Let's say an issue or a crime or whatever it might be, people still remember the incident, right? So, if you have a court case that is years and years later, obviously people's memories start to fade. Some people, who knows, might not even be around anymore. So, it's important to get it done quick, fast, shortly after, let's say, the crime that happened. And then, well, it's open to the public. So people know exactly what's happening. Again, they might have some closed courtrooms based off of, or court cases here, based off of how big the issue or concern might be in order to try to keep media out of the courtroom as much as possible. Jury that is impartial appears, so you can't go in, obviously with a, favored opinion or maybe a political viewpoint or I don't know, a relationship with someone that's being trialed, right? So that's always important. Jury duty, not fun, not fun. But I guess it's a day out of work. I don't know. It's not the best. I never had it. I was supposed to go. It was during COVID. And as I got to the courthouse, they're like, "Yep, we're done. Good. See you. Gone." I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I didn't have to do anything. Got You got to listen to the court case and all, and you got to talk with everybody of what evidence was brought forth and who you think is guilty or not guilty. That's it. So you just got to see who's guilty or not guilty. So they present it to you. You talk with the other jurors in the back room. Sometimes it goes quick. Sometimes it's days. Yeah. You can't talk about it either. It's very boring, yeah, from what I heard. I was excited to do it actually, and then when I showed up, they're like, "Nope, it's not happening now." So they gave me like $5 check for the gas I drove out. It's like, "Oh, cool. Thanks." Yeah. All right. Anyway, defendant is able to hear the evidence against him or her. Accused is able to defend him or herself, present evidence in his or her own case. Yeah, I'm doing something right now. Sorry, Reagan. All right. See you second period. I'm recording. All right. Trial takes place in a speedy manner. Like I mentioned, you got to make sure it's quick right after this crime happened because people's memories start to fade. And I don't know, maybe someone might die in between that and a court case. So I want to make sure that you have a fair trial. Again, speedy manner. All right. Speedy trial, just talked about it. So best interest to have it as soon as possible in order to make sure that people don't forget what happened or what occurred. So people don't move away or let's say die. Who knows? So as time passes by, evidence is lost. Maybe someone might tamper with the crime scene. Someone might get rid of certain evidence that would be crucial for the court decision. There's a lot to it. That's all it means by a speedy trial. All right, right to legal counsel. So meaning that, well, and not just a severe crime, right? But even let's say something as small as theft, right? I know theft isn't great, but it's not murder. Still, the state has to provide you a lawyer. And there's a few court cases that I'm going to talk about today where this was decided upon. One where they didn't have to provide a lawyer, and then later down the line, which we'll talk about with Gideon versus Wainright, they did provide a lawyer, which provided him and prompted him to become, it got him out of jail. So it was interesting. Actually, I was there. Oh yeah, that was pretty cool. This is a Vietnam War memorial in Washington D.C. I just saw it yesterday. Crazy. All right, so Betts versus Brady. This is what I was talking about when it comes to the Supreme Court. They looked at this situation, which, well, in this case, this guy named Betts, he was charged for robbing a convenience store, I believe it was. Anyway, he was supposed to represent himself because he didn't have a lawyer. He couldn't afford one. And it got to the point where he did that poorly that he was seen as guilty. And then he wrote to the Supreme Court saying that this wasn't fair because he believes he should have a right to a lawyer. And at the time in the 1930s, so 1939 is when this happened, this crime happened. They said that you're only provided a lawyer if it is a serious crime like murder, right? But if it's theft, something like this, then no, right? And well, in that case, he argued, and the Supreme Court did pick up the case, and they said that the state doesn't have to provide a lawyer because it is a smaller crime, right? If it was more severe, sure, fine, but in this case, no. So it will be overturned in Gideon versus Wainright, which will provide the, again, people, the right to a lawyer, which is needed in order to represent themselves, but help represent themselves in court. So again, this one, they denied it. The Supreme Court said, no, you know what? Actually, um, because it is a smaller crime, I don't have to provide a lawyer. All right, but Gideon versus Wainwright, which happened about 30 years later, 20 years later, they said, actually, no, right? This isn't right. Whatever crime it might be, people should have a right to a lawyer. Anyway, with what happened, this guy named Gideon robbed a pool hall. And as he robbed this pool hall, so they said, um, he was he had to go on trial and he had to try to show that he was innocent in the crime, that he didn't do it, and again, did not do a good job. He wasn't too bright. He was kind of like a drifter. Do you guys know what I mean by that? Kind of like a homeless man in a way. And as he's going place to place, well, they accused him of this crime of robbing this pool hall. And as he did a poor job in the courtroom, well, as he was in jail, listen to this, he wrote on a napkin a letter to the Supreme Court saying that he was um, unwrongly put in jail. He didn't do the crime, and that he believes he should have had a lawyer, uh, attorney for him for his case. So he writes this on a napkin, sends it to the Supreme Court, and they actually picked it up. They said, you know what? I know this is kind of weird and strange on a napkin, but we'll pick it up. And as he's in his jail cell, he wrote this out, and the Supreme Court did take it up, and they reversed Betts versus Brady, which just happened before. And they said, yeah, you know what? It doesn't matter what the crime is. They still should provide a lawyer for these people that are charged with a crime. And, well, they viewed it and they saw that he was actually not guilty of the robbery and he was pulled out of prison. And this is one of the most biggest, this is probably the biggest court cases when it deals with the Sixth Amendment right to attorney because it worked out for him. And understanding his circumstances, he was in jail and everything, writing this letter out, and the Supreme Court did pick it up. It's pretty cool, pretty interesting. So, anyway, well, like I said, his rights with the Sixth Amendment. He realized it and said that he should have an attorney, which, yeah, he was right. All right. Again, landmark case because the Supreme Court overturned Betts versus Brady and said that no matter what the crime is, right, he should be acquitted of the charges due to lack of a legal counsel. So that's what the Supreme Court said. They agreed on, and it was 9-0. So it was unanimous. So they all agreed on it. I know in 20 years, sometimes interpreting the law might change, which happens quite a bit. And it depends on what kind of justices you have in the Supreme Court. So yeah, things can change over time, which is right, right? People have different viewpoints and opinions and perspectives on certain matters as time goes by. All right, you guys good with this slide? I know you are. All right, Eighth Amendment. So excessive bail, excessive fines not permitted. And when it comes to a bond bail, that just means that you're paying the money in order to get out of jail. All right. If the accuser are no show, then bail is forfeited. So if you don't show up for let's say the hearing here, then yeah, you don't get bail, right? That means that you skipped out on it, that you didn't think it was necessary, and they're like, yep, we're taking it away. But it can't be excessive, meaning they can't put a ridiculous amount of money down for people that they can't afford to bail themselves out of jail. Now, in serious crimes, when it comes to murder or rape or something crazy, then yeah, they can take that away or make it at an extreme limit. But for people that are really, really committing horrible crimes, they'll say, yeah, no bail here because we need to keep this guy under lock and key. They can't let this guy go. So there are some stipulations to it, depending on the crime. All right, so the 14th Amendment, rights to citizens. So we already talked about the due process of law. So just meaning that people have same rights, right? Not one person is treated different than another. And everyone is guaranteed equal protection of the laws. Again, when it comes to the 14th Amendment, this is right after the Civil War, and this was created for free slaves. So once the Civil War is finished up, many African Americans were denied rights, privileges around the country. We all know the Jim Crow laws in the South, but this was supposed to provide citizenship then, following with other amendments, and give them the same and equal rights as all American citizens. And right now, like we talked about with current events, right? There's a lot of debate about whether illegal aliens should get these same rights, which we're seeing a discussion right now about it. And it wasn't designed for that, right? At the time of this, they didn't really have the term illegal aliens yet. So it was one of those things that was like, well, this was designed for, free slaves after the Civil War. I don't know if this really pertains to people that come to the country illegally. So we'll see where it goes. We'll see where it goes. All right, the Ninth Amendment, people's rights are not limited to those mentioned in the U.S. Constitution. So as the Bill of Rights was created, it's not like you can label every single right, liberty, freedom on the Bill of Rights in the Constitution. So more or less, they're saying, hey, these are not your only rights, but everything else that we're just not thinking of right now is listed here with the Ninth Amendment. So that was one of the debates early on with the founding fathers. So that the Federalists, it's like, hey, you want to put a Bill of Rights in this? Well, are you going to put every single right and liberty on it? It's like, oh, yeah, that's a good point. Well, we'll just cover everything else with the Ninth Amendment done. So that's the way around it, I guess. And then finally, the 10th Amendment, because of the necessary and proper clause, known as the elastic clause, meaning that the federal government has a little bit more of these powers that are not stated in the Constitution. It stretches, right? These rights are actually presented to the states, right? That powers that are not specifically granted to the federal government are reserved to the states. So in other words, it creates reserve powers. You guys remember that with federalism, that chapter? We had delegated powers, reserve powers, and concurrent. Reserve are for the states, and that comes from the 10th Amendment here. And the goal here, protect from the all-powerful federal government. So give the states more rights, give them more powers. All right, is there any questions?